Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. I'm Emily Clark.
And I'm Rick Aaron. Utah and Mississippi are not geographically near each other, but they are standing side by side in a legal effort to have the Supreme Court overturn Roe v. Wade, possibly paving the way for states to outlaw abortion. Utah is among the 24 states listed on a brief supporting Mississippi's test case to overturn the landmark 1973 ruling that the U.S. Constitution protects a woman's right to have an abortion. In a statement provided to ABC4 News, Utah Solicitor General Melissa Holyoke says, quote, "We support the petition to the Supreme Court because similar to Mississippi's law, Utah's law prohibiting elective abortions after 18 weeks is constitutional. Nothing in the Constitution prevents states from enacting reasonable measures to safeguard the dignity of all human beings, including the unborn. The legal challenge to Utah's law is stayed pending the outcome of the Supreme Court's decision, but the Attorney General's office will continue to vigorously defend Utah law. Today, I spoke to several people on both sides of the issue.
I am against abortion, so I am for overturning Roe v. Wade. I think that was a misguided judgment by the Supreme Court.
I'm perturbed, a little bit embarrassed. It doesn't surprise me what states are involved. They seem to be the states that really want to trample on women's rights the most, so I'm not surprised. And I'm not surprised Utah's participating, unfortunately.
I'm pro-life just because I love children, and pretty much all my nieces and nephews, I love them to death.
I'm extremely upset. I can't think of another law that governs a man's body. I can't name one. And I really think that there's a lot of men that make these rules, and I feel like a woman should have her own choice.
Utah Senator Mike Lee also filed a brief in support of overturning Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court has announced that it will hear the Mississippi case during its next term, which begins in October. Of course, a lot of eyes are going to be on the Supreme Court this fall with that decision looming. Noted Salt Lake City Attorney Greg Skordas joins us now to break this all down. Greg, connect the dots for us. How does this Mississippi case impact what could possibly happen here in Utah?
Well, Rick, because what the state of Mississippi is asking the United States Supreme Court to do is to effectively do away with Roe versus Wade and another case that came down a few years later called Casey versus Planned Parenthood, which allowed that the Constitution of the United States supported or at least allowed the concept of abortion, and further went on to say that states can regulate it, but they have to do so within the parameters of the federal guidelines. And so we've had 50 years of law. The state of Mississippi and the state of Utah have both come in and said it's time to change the law. And the makeup of the Supreme Court has changed significantly, so I think a lot of these conservatives are thinking that the timing is right.
Yeah, this Mississippi case kind of questions the precedent that was set back in 1973 by Roe versus Wade. What is their contention that would be the basis for overturning that decision?
So you're exactly right. Normally we expect that the Supreme Court decisions are precedent, that we're going to support those. We call that stare decisis. Mississippi is taking the position, which is really kind of unusual, which is that Roe versus Wade was decided wrong right at the beginning. It should have never been decided that way, and we've had 50 years of bad law. So what they're saying is, do away with it. It was a bad decision. It's been bad law for 50 years, and we should do away with it. Now, Utah's also got a very similar law to Mississippi's, which has been on hold pending the outcome of this Supreme Court decision.
So as you mentioned, the court very conservative leaning right now. Should they overturn Roe versus Wade, what would happen here in Utah likely?
Well, then the Utah law would probably go into effect. Now, Roe versus Wade and Casey have decided that the decision to be made, the timing to be made, is what we call viability, which is about 24 weeks. And they say that a woman cannot get the procedure done after 24 weeks. Utah law is saying, well, that should be shortened to 18 weeks. Mississippi law has shortened it even further to 15 weeks, and some people fear that we will have some states that will outlaw it entirely. But we're whittling away at Roe versus Wade, and a lot of states are, and they're trying to see if the Supreme Court's going to bite on that.
A lot of emotions on both sides, but legally, this is a very convoluted, complicated issue because it involves the medical profession, it involves women's rights to choose what happens to their own body, and you also have to factor in the rights of the unborn, who are the unrepresented voice in all this, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Rick. And that's what's troubled people for 50 years. That's why people have said, well, why are we even having this discussion? And it's interesting that the people that you interviewed here, the two people that were in favor of setting aside Roe versus Wade were men, and the people that were in favor of keeping it in place were both women. And maybe that was just a coincidence, but you're exactly right. We're talking about the state, the legislature, trying to dictate what a woman can do with her body. And it's just been contentious in this country now for half a century.
All right. Noted Salt Lake City attorney and former candidate for Utah Attorney General Greg Skordas joining us live. Thank you very much for all your insight on this issue.
You bet.